We did it! Sorry, I'm just having a flashback to last week. Okay, good. Now, good evening, everyone. How are you feeling? Come on, how are you feeling? Very, very good, very good. That's very nice. It feels a bit game showy in here tonight. I feel like it's underneath your seats. You got a car? You got a car? Can you feel this? In fact, I think we should probably like bring the lights up and then, you know, I was just talking to Greg. I think a good session would be who's hiring and who needs a job? Yeah. Right? Who's into that? Put your hands up if you want to get hired tonight. Yeah, I said hired. Okay, good. Right. Now, we are here in the Pennine Lecture Theatre. Can I get an ooh? Yeah, this is, by the way, the largest theatre at Sheffield Hallam University. It has over 400 seats. So if my lecture in mathematics is right, that's the first biggest by 34%. That also means we're going to have to watch out for 5 seats in here tonight that are probably going to do weird things. So keep an eye on them for me, okay? Thank you. Right. Now, we'd like to also offer our thanks, our biggest thanks and gratitude to all our sponsors who are supporting the CMC this year. Sponsors, yes, yes, thank you. Some of them are here tonight, thank you, including our patron sponsor in particular, who will form the backbone of our support. Sorry, no, what? No, next slide, sorry. They're our sponsors, thank you. Our sponsors, come on, our sponsors, thank you. Fantastic sponsors. Right. Okay, I want to work for Wildbrain. They sound like fun. Now, okay, so we also have to thank a big sponsor for tonight, Magic Light Pictures. Magic Light Pictures. Are you in the house? Are you here? Yes? Yes, on the front row. VIP seats, of course. We really could not do the CMC without you. Thank you. And my bar bill too. Thanks. Now, I can smell the excitement, or is it gin? I'm not sure what it is, but I know a few of you here might be gently aroused by the fact that the England match is happening tonight. Okay, that's 2. Right. So anyway, I have details about where you 2 people can go and see it for free later. Great, I know, it's great. I'm giving away so much. So stay with us, and that's the tease to keep you here. Good. Now, on to this evening, because we have a treat for you as always. In a few minutes, we will welcome to the stage the magnificent award-winning producer, creator, director. Is there anything she can't do? Nora Twomey is here with us, ladies and gentlemen. Right. But before that, our Changemaker, Bethany Handley, is an incredible force. She's a poet, she's an award-winning writer and disability activist from South Wales, and she's someone who passionately puts all her energies into campaigning for greater rights for the disabled, especially when it comes to better access to nature. So, let's get involved with that experience. Let's, for a moment, enter into her space with her, and you can either watch or close your eyes and listen to her poetry.
As I sit in my van with the door open, the wind pours at my skin, summoning me to follow the footfall up the hips of the hill. But my wheelchair, waiting in the back, is not welcomed by scuffed paths. As I watch the raven wheeling in the hush of the valley, I murmur to the wind, enough, I'm here.
Beautiful and thought-provoking, as I'm sure you agree, and that's just an example of a canon of Bethany's work. Unfortunately, she actually is unable to join us here tonight because she's ill, but luckily, we got her to pre-record her segment for us tonight, so she can still have her voice here heard. So please, for our CMC 2024, I'm proud to welcome our Changemaker.
I'm Bethany Handley, a writer and disability activist. When I became a wheelchair user, I found myself padlocked out of much of our countryside as quickly as I'd lost the use of my legs. I grew up in rural South Wales, hiking, caving, canoeing and climbing. I lay in my hospital bed visualising myself on Blorange or Sugarloaf, mountains as familiar to me as my own name. I emerged from hospital ready to learn to live again. I had to learn to sit up again, to move, to get dressed. But it wasn't relearning to live that was challenging. I had previously been so lucky to never had to question my entitlement to move freely through nature. Now, I quickly learnt that public footpaths aren't public. Everywhere I turned, there were stiles or padlocked gates keeping me out of fields. Kissing gates where my wheel body of metal, tyres and flesh would get wedged. Paths too narrow, steep or uneven for my wheels, and no disabled toilets or parking in rural spaces. Realising that access hadn't been designed for my wheelchair-using body, I grieved my inability to access green and blue spaces. But it wasn't the natural world that was keeping me out or disabling me. It was human design. We have preserved access for those who have historically had access to the countryside, whilst ensuring we continue to shut out the most marginalised. Whilst the physical barriers to access halted my movement, social barriers also helped to padlock me out of the countryside. Out on the trails, strangers would stop to ask me what happened, or say, "Slow down, Speedy," or "Does your wheelchair have a speed limit?" Walkers were well-intentioned, but their comments and jokes were as wounding as hate speech. They reminded me that, as a disabled person, they did not think I belonged in nature. So why didn't they expect to see me and my wheelchair-using body sharing their paths? Is it because they had no experience of truly diverse representation? We congratulate ourselves for including a photo of the wheelchair user in a PowerPoint slide. We've set representation of marginalised communities as palatable tropes and don't dare to push the limits. Disabled people are nearly always depicted as passive and virtuous, lacking agency, independence and adventurous spirit. Searching photos for this talk, I found only photos of wheelchair users who appeared to have been parked in inside environments or being pushed by others. I searched stock images for disabled people exploring mountains and forests with agency. But these images don't exist. I thought about films featuring disabled characters, but the only ones I could name involved films such as Me Before You, where a man, played by a non-disabled actor, is privileged and loved and has a beautifully accessible home and chooses to stay indoors, ultimately making the decision to end his life. Or Avatar, where a wheelchair user decides to venture off to far-off planets and to adopt an alien's body rather than to access Earth with his family and friends on wheels. This lack of representation doesn't just harm the most marginalised. It harms all of us. 1 in 4 people in the UK are disabled, and we are the only minority that you could and probably will join at some point in your life. Yet where are we on your screens and in your books? Whilst we're getting better at depicting more diverse lived experience on the screen, on the page and in the media, we limit ourselves, not daring to challenge comfortable representation. Poor representation has consequences far beyond children growing up not knowing that their bodies and their way of moving through the world is beautiful and valid. I didn't know as a new wheelchair user what was possible for me and my new body, and have had to devote my time to pushing the limits of my freedom every single day. Which paths can I access? Where can I go, since no maps speak to me and my way of moving? But diverse representation goes far beyond lifting limits placed on our freedom. Diverse representation ensures we design a world that is accessible for everyone. I am not disabled by my wheelchair or being unable to walk. I am disabled by the barriers that we have introduced. Diverse and daring representation can help to remove these barriers, and responsibility for removing these barriers lies with each of us. Imagine if we saw more wheelchair users accessing the rural extremes of our landscapes, if we saw more people who do not move with ease? Might we start to design access for all? Because we would know that everyone, no matter how we look or walk or move or see or hear or think, where we grew up or what we've survived, has a right to access nature. When media representation of people in nature lacks diversity, it harms everyone. Diverse and daring media representation doesn't just make people feel they belong. It changes the world. So how can equality in the outdoors save the planet? Do you feel that sense of awe and wonder deep in your chest when you sit on a mountain summit, dive into a wave, or look up at the dizzying tree canopy above you as you breathe through the forest? Well, that feeling is currently a privilege, reserved for a minority who have the funds and the entitlement to know that they belong in the outdoors and have had access designed for them. We debate and debate why we don't do anything to stop the climate catastrophe unfolding around us. But why would you do anything if you don't experience what it is that needs to be protected? If you've always been shut out from nature, how can you value the importance of your irreducible role within the natural world? And why should you? The future of our planet depends on everyone being able to feel that sense of awe and wonder when you marvel at your place in the natural world. When media representation of people in nature lacks diversity, it harms people and planet and fuels climate inaction. The future of our planet depends on each of us rethinking diverse media representation, challenging the limits of the stories you tell and how you tell them. You must step out of the safe zone of representation and subvert expectations. Unsettle people. The state of the planet your children will inherit depends on you looking at the people you meet when you're in the outdoors and the faces on your screens and asking, who's missing? Why? And what can you do about it? Diverse representation isn't radical, but it can help to save the planet. Thank you.
I think, wow. I think we're all profoundly grateful to Bethany for helping us think different tonight about the privilege of us just stepping into nature, which is really extraordinary. And could we all just do something for her because she's stuck at home and not having a great time? So Hester, you've got a video camera, haven't you, somewhere? Where are you? Where have you gone? You're over there. Okay, Hester, can you just come out the front here? Can we have the lights up? And could you guys all give, when I give you the cue, perhaps we can just give a big cheer for Bethany, okay? Right. So that's Bethany Handley, our Changemaker. Okay, thank you. Right then, on to tonight's creative keynote speaker. Well, her career could quite easily be made into an epic animated feature in its own right, starting with just dreams, determination, and, well, basically all the talent she could muster. Oh, and by the way, no business plan whatsoever. And that led our speaker to create and direct and even use her own voice to act in some truly astounding and amazing animated shows, stories, and features that rocked our industry with their jaw-dropping scale, beauty, and artistry. And in their wake, producing 5 Academy Award nominations, 2 Golden Globe nominations, BAFTAs, IFTAs, and Emmy Awards. And to think all of that just started off as some friends getting together with Cartoon Saloon in Kilkenny in Ireland. Please welcome our incredible CMC 2024 creative keynote speaker, Nora Twomey.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for finding your way to this wonderful venue this evening. When Chris and Grania, my executive producer and producer of this keynote segment, asked me to speak here at the CMC, they asked me to kind of have a look under the hood and maybe at some of the challenges that Cartoon Saloon have faced over our first 25 years, and I was really only too glad to do that. I became really aware, especially with some of the successes that we've had, that oftentimes the story of the studio gets put into a little nutshell that sounds really, glossy and has to do with red carpets and famous names and that, but the things that actually make the company work, the difficult times that we've been through, the times that we weren't sure whether we would be able to switch on the lights the next week or whether we'd be able to make payroll, those kind of stories don't really get told. So that's what I want to kind of give you a little glimpse of as we go through the 25 years of Cartoon Saloon, with a little bit of focus as well on, I guess, my own personal journey, because that kind of warts and all thing, I feel a little bit more comfortable talking about my own warts rather than my partner's, if that makes any sense, in any kind of non-disgusting way. But so I'm going to start by just showing our show reel, just some of the work that we've done over the last while. Thank you. That reel features the music of Keela, who are a traditional Irish band. And one of the first things we did when we as a group moved to Kilkenny and began to work together, and we had very little money in the bank, Keela came to play in Kilkenny. And I remember Tom Moore, one of my partners in Cartoon Saloon, trying to pluck up the courage to go and like tap on their shoulders after the gig and ask them would they allow us to use some of their music in some of the work that we were producing at the time. And I remember kind of saying to Tom, like, we've nothing to pay them with. They're like, you know, a huge Irish band, and I didn't think that they were going to do it, but he really just wanted to ask the question. And of course they agreed, no problem. They saw that we were a creative group, they were a creative group, and it was the beginning of a friendship and a lasting collaboration. And they've worked on the Celtic trilogy of films and many other projects with us, and they still come to play in Kilkenny, and the town of Kilkenny has a very special place in their hearts ever since. We like to think of ourselves as a unique creative enterprise based in Kilkenny, and Kilkenny is very important to us. There was a time where we wondered whether we should be based in London or Paris or even Dublin, especially when we were trying to compete in the early years in the commercials world. So we tried to do some ads for TV, because we felt with one ad we could sustain the company for about 3 months, which meant that we could invest that money back into our own development, and we could maintain our own independence, because we really wanted to tell our own stories and to use our own creative voices and find our creative voices. In those early days, we weren't even sure who we were, who we wanted to be as a collaborative group, and how we gelled together. We are now just over 100 people. We're growing to about 200 later on this year. We don't like being much more than about 250, because at that point we begin to lose the culture of the studio. I pass people in the hallway and I don't know who they are. If we're less than 100, then we begin to lose some of the real creative and administrative core of the studio, and that really affects the culture of the place as well. But our plan isn't exponential growth. Oftentimes when people try to court us for investment, that's the question that they ask, and that's when we know we don't have the right partner, because making the content that we make is dependent on seeing the whites of the eyes of the people that we work with, and being able to work with like-minded studios around the world of similar sizes, or who share the same values as we do. We weren't always sure about that, though, and again, when we started the company, we weren't sure how long we could keep going, mainly because none of the three of us were business people. We were artists. We saw ourselves as animators, and we didn't know a lot about the business side of things, or how that was going to work for us. And a lot of the time, lots of times were pretty difficult for us, but it was interesting even then, in those early first few years, hearing people, talk that were in much larger studios about how we were living the dream, because we were getting to make our own creative content. But there was a huge amount of insecurity that came with that. And it's funny how you can think the grass is greener someplace else, because we would look at more secure companies and think that they had it all sorted out, and they would look at us and say, oh, look at these guys, they're just risking it all, seat of the pants, don't know if the lights are going to be on next week. And we were like, yeah. So years later, we look back and we see what encapsulates our work, I guess, what helps us say yes to things. The more successful we got, the more we had to say no to things, because the more people were knocking on our doors asking us to be part of different types of projects. And for us, brave stories are really important. So the stories that we tell have to be brave in some way. Stories that don't normally get told, some stories that mightn't get the coverage that we might be able to bring to something, a story that's very unique or personal to somebody. They have to be brave in some way, and they also have to be beautiful. We just love working with extremely wonderful animators, artists. It's still the reason why myself and Tom and Paul, get up in the mornings, is to get into work and to see the drawings that people are doing, or the outlines that they're writing, and how they collaborate with each other, and how the friction, the arguments, the strops, the wonderful ideas, they can all contribute to really robust and wonderful stories. We're always trying to just get the best of ourselves up on the screen, and that always happens through true collaboration when you can't remember who had what brilliant idea that became something else that then got swapped out for something else. When you get that wonderful kind of collaboration where nobody's minding their own creativity, that's the sweet spot that we love to go for, because it's within that process that we feel truly wealthy, you know, that what each of us do with our day is the only true wealth that any of us can really have. And if you get to do something that you really love every day, then you are truly wealthy, because what's money for if it's not that? So this is the warts part. So just a little bit about myself and my own relationship to storytelling, and how I found my way through even the different projects in Cartoon Saloon in different roles, whether it was giving a voice for a character, or helping with editing something, or animating on something, or whatever, producing, helping that way. We all wear many different hats in Cartoon Saloon. We don't really like to think of ourselves, in a very kind of departmental way, because even knowing how somebody else manages their department, or how the work that they're doing helps the entire thing work an awful lot better. So going way back, I guess, I always loved storytelling. My mother was from North Cork, and she had this lovely lilt in her voice, and every story that she told would have me just on the edge of my seat. But she realized after a couple of years that my reading wasn't coming on that well, so she brought me these Ladybird Read It Yourself books, and I was initially kind of dismayed, because she withdrew from reading to me in order to help me come forward and to start reading myself. And it was difficult to start out with, but I did. But these books, because we didn't have an awful lot of money in those days, I didn't have a lot of these books, so I would go back and reread them several times, and I would write sentences in between the sentences that were printed in the books. Sometimes I would try to change the inference of a sentence by putting a question mark or an exclamation mark. I would draw in my own characters in there as well, and I try and reinvent the story. Just to make it interesting for myself. The Pied Piper of Hamelin, though, I still wonder what happened to those children, and what kind of a parental kind of figure he actually was in the cave, and whether they're okay. It still kind of haunts me to this day. I never had a lot of blank paper. Again, like I grew up in the 70s and 80s. I grew up on a farm with seven. There were 7 of us in total. Nice big Irish Catholic family. So I didn't have bits like big, sheets of paper. So I would just draw on the margins of copybooks. In summertime, I would reuse the bits of the copybooks that I didn't get to draw. And I used to draw a lot of nice 70s fashion models in skinny jeans, which are back or gone again, I guess. When school wasn't all that easy for me, I couldn't control my brain, basically. When I was supposed to be thinking about this stuff, I was thinking about unicorns and space rockets and whatever else. All kinds of things, and I used to kind of run away actually quite a bit. So when it was time to get into the car to go to school in the morning, I would take a sharp left and just run up the fields, sit, next to the walls that my ancestors built, and just try to remain still until the birds would come out, or little field mice would. Which wasn't that easy on my mum. When I was 14, my dad passed away from cancer. It was back in the days where you didn't mention the cancer word. And then at 15, I never kind of put these together until much later, but at 15, I left school with no qualifications. And then at 16, a local lady who had a doll workshop. She used to, I don't know if you ever saw the back of these Women's Weekly or Woman's Weekly magazines, where you'd have these catalogs for like weird looking dolls that you could send away for. And they were all like £100 and things like that. So they weren't for kids, they were for older ladies to collect. So Judy Cuddy, that lady, used to make these. I used to make 100 a week for her, 100 dolls. And it was incredible. It gave me a huge sense of confidence, actually, because I could make something, and even the painting of the faces, I got to learn how to make appeal. If you made the eyebrows kind of go one way, the doll would look cross and nobody would buy her. If I put them the other way, then she'd look all sympathetic and people would want to buy her because she looked like she needed to be taken care of. So we didn't make dolls like this, though. But it did give me a kind of a fascination, not just for dolls, but then for the people, who bought them as well. I was really curious about that whole market. I don't know if it's still a thing. You'll often notice in secondhand stores now, you'll see, my local secondhand store, oftentimes they will have a display full of these kind of reproduction antique dolls, and I know that an old lady has passed away someplace by that. So that job was fantastic, but it didn't pay a lot of money, and at that point, I realized I really wanted to go back into college and learn, because I was drawing the whole time still, and I wanted to get back in there some way. I needed to earn some money in order to do that, and so I got a job working in a local factory where I worked 12-hour shifts at night. You could earn a little bit more by working at night, and in the season, so in the harvest season, you would work 7 days a week, but at night. And so I had the stamina for it. I was young, but also you couldn't. There was nothing to occupy your brain because my job was to pick the rotten bits or black bits out of the green beans or whatever the vegetables were. There was a loud machinery, so you had to wear protective gear on your ears. You couldn't have conversations, so I used to just make up beginnings, middles, and ends to get through 12-hour shifts. And it was it built up my confidence because I earned enough money to go to college, and I got into Ballyfermot College, which had been set up in the 80s to feed the Don Bluth Studios in Dublin, which is a fantastic studio where a lot of actually talent that is still in Dublin and around Ireland and Europe and beyond still works, or they got their skills and their start there. But the year that I think I graduated was the year that they shut down. But Ballyfermot, sitting on that grass, is where I met Tom Moore and Paul Young, Jeremy Purcell, Fabian Erlinghauser, Lorraine Lorden, and a lot of people that I still work with today. Tom had an incredible amount of confidence. He had sketchbooks full of ideas, and one of them was about the Book of Kells, this ancient Irish manuscript. And he had the beginnings of some kind of a story around that and the creation of that, a very imaginative story. And he had the ability to pull in people around him. So myself and Paul, Fabian, we would all contribute drawings and story ideas. And he just had this wonderful just this notion that he could do it, which was to me not something that I was that used to. And so we, after college, I worked in Brown Bag in Dublin for a year. Tom and Paul graduated, and the rest of my colleagues graduated, and then we all came down to Kilkenny. And the reason why we set up in Kilkenny was where Tom got his confidence from was when he was a teenager, there was an organisation called Young Irish Filmmakers in Kilkenny who were set up in an old orphanage. And they would put film equipment into the hands of young people, teenagers, and tell them how to crew up, how to write an outline, how to write a script, how to collaborate together, and how to shoot something, how to edit it. And then they would have a screening for friends and families, and sometimes those films would get into some festivals. And so he had this incredible confidence with them. So he went back to Young Irish Filmmakers, asked them, could we get one of their rooms in the old orphanage? And they provided us with a room. They also managed to secure a small grant, which was something similar to like a job seeker's allowance, but which meant that we were able to set up in that room together. If you look there, I think you can see Paul Young becoming a producer. He's got his back to us in front of one of those windows, and the reason why he became the producer is because he sat in front of the computer and he sat in front of the phone. And so that's how that started. I remember answering the phone one day to Ross Stewart is an incredible artist. He was the art director on The Secret of Kells and co-directed WolfWalkers with Tom. And his mum was ringing up one day, so I answered the phone and I said, "Hello, Cartoon Saloon," and she just laughed at me. She just thought it was the cutest thing ever that we'd called our company Cartoon Saloon, and she would just kind of ring up on occasion and just put the phone to her friends' ears just so that like they could have a laugh at our expense. I can't, CMC here in Sheffield, I'm sure, has a wonderful, an effect that you can't actually quantify. Young Irish filmmakers had an effect on young people in, a small city, small town in Ireland that you can't quantify. And the guy in the middle there is Mike Kelly, who's set it up with a board, and there's Tom beside him, one of his most famous students. And this is my son a couple of years ago receiving his certificate after making a film with his young colleagues not so long ago. This is fresh-faced me, all happy, what could possibly go wrong? And Tom there in the background, we were working on paper and pencil. That's how we set up, and that's how we started. So we did some commercials, we did anything basically to keep the lights on. We did a proof of concept teaser for The Secret of Kells as we began to write and explore. And then Screen Ireland, which is then the Irish Film Board, had, and they still do have something called frameworks where they will give new filmmakers a little bit of money to make a short film. And so though we'd been taught in college how to animate pretty well, we did a lot of life drawing, we knew how to become great animation assistants for a classical 2D pipeline that wasn't really there to the extent for us Irish students anyway. This is where I learned how to make films. So the pipeline that I learned there is, what I work on today is some kind of an extension of that. So I think I have a small little clip from that. I learned an awful lot. What I learned, besides how to construct a beginning, middle, and end in a 9-minute piece, I learned my own storytelling voice, or began to learn it. Began to learn how to build a world, and that, when I say I mean with my team. Tom animated on this. Paul Young helped me with the sound design. My husband's storyboarded on it. I learned how to have confidence with time, though. I learned about sitting in an audience and imagining their experience of something and allowing the time to kind of wash over them. So that began my interest in editing, and I still, I left Ireland left the Avid machine to come here to CMC today. I call it a machine, it's a PC, but so I learned confidence with theme as well, sticking to a really simple theme, putting it in front of my computer and just always making sure that everything relates back to that. And audience's time is the most important thing. Again, time is our actual wealth. And so if you're asking your audience for their time, then you better really take care of them and take care of their experiences as well as you can. This is something I made for a live action producer at one point. But again, we're still using some kind of version of this. And just getting through all of those stages, each stage that you get through, whether it's like the initial outline or when you get into your final mix, you think, okay, I'm after the hard bit now, the next bit's going to be easy. And no matter how many times you do it, and no matter on what scale, the next bit is always the hardest bit for us. The second short, I'm not going to show a clip, but it was based on a short story by an Irish short story writer called Jackie McDonough about a boy who was born with his head backwards and how his dad didn't really know how to relate to him, and his mum had just this wonderful unconditional love, and it's just that journey. But like I said, I'm not going to show a clip because you can look it up on YouTube if you like. But what I learned, besides beginning and middle and end, was how to empower my crew. I remember Fabian was doing a scene for me. I briefed him on Monday. He finished it by Friday. And it was a scene where this little boy kind of got up and walked, and it was supposed to be all weird because his head was the wrong way around and everything was kind of a bit strange with it. But it wasn't quite what I wanted. But I felt really bad that I hadn't communicated well enough to Fabian. So over the weekend, I spent the whole weekend reanimating the scene. And then on Monday morning, Fabian was kind of ready to come back and just have another go at it. And I said, well, I've done it already. And I just remember his face. And he said, like, why? You know, why? Like, couldn't I have gotten there? And of course he could. And it was at that moment I realized that everybody in your crew has to have a sense of ownership over what they did. Your job as a director is to communicate the vision of the story, but not to take people's autonomy, and to make sure that you let people in and make sure that they have a sense of ownership over the work that they're doing. Because if they don't invest. And if they don't invest, you are lost, and you're whatever you're putting up there on the screen will not be the best of the team, and it needs to be the best of the team. I learned who I serve as a director, all of the department's head, the supervisors, the lead artists, assistants, you serve all of these people. Compromise is something that I also learned. You're never going to get everything that you want on a film or on a TV series, and knowing what to compromise on and what you can compromise on is extremely important. So we began making our first feature, The Secret of Kells, after making a proof of concept teaser. And The Secret of Kells is based on an Irish manuscript which depicts the four Gospels, but it's the beauty of the work within that manuscript is something that really took our imaginations away, and also the fact that it is it describes a period of Irish history where the pagan ways were being let go of and the Christian ways were being embraced. And so the space between those things, between the Irish Celtic goddess of Bridget and Saint Bridget, who came and replaced her, the story between those spaces was where our interest was. And so, but we didn't really know, again, in college, we hadn't really learned how to write a script. And so we had tremendous visuals, but our script wasn't working really at all. And so our French co-producer, Didier Brunner, brought in Fabrice, who helped us a lot with understanding story, especially with film, and he was the one who kind of introduced us to the hero's journey. So a 3-act structure with a hero or heroine going through a number of kind of events and arriving back kind of more or less where they started, but utterly changed. And so that's something that we've used and not used and worked with and worked against over the years, but it's given a really good coat hanger or a really good structure, even by which we can speak to each other as a group of storytellers. And then it kind of, I remember Fabrice kind of going through all the different stories and applying the hero's journey to them, and we're like, really, minds were blown. But then we had to, we had to find our own artistic voice as well. In college, we had learned how to draw in the style of Disney, in the style of Bluth, in the style of different kind of artists, and that was kind of seen as good. And then finding our own voice was something that it took a little bit longer. And because we were a group of peers, there wasn't really a hierarchy there either. So it was difficult to try and navigate all of that and all of the different influences that we had through the years, because we were also in Ireland, the national broadcaster had bought a lot of really strange cartoons from Canada and from Eastern Europe, and so we were influenced by lots of different shorts and feature films. And then we were also very much influenced a little later by the Japanese work, and especially that of Studio Ghibli. And of course we continue to draw every day. Most of the artists that I work with continue to do life drawing as well, because it just hones your ability to see and listen, slow yourself down, just not particularly to, if you're going too fast through life, you're not really taking things in, and so drawing makes us really aware of our environment. And so Didier is the one who kind of gave us the confidence, and he's one of the first funders who kind of stood behind us and said, okay, I think these guys are the real deal, even though we had only a few shorts, a couple of commercials, Keela. We had a couple of things in our bag, but we didn't have a feature film, we didn't have series, and we were about 15 people at that time. And we expanded really quickly from 15 to 75. We did a series at the same time as The Secret of Kells, not knowing that we could kind of stagger our productions. We just thought, okay, let's not look at gift horse in the mouth, let's just do the two at the same time. We used all our expertise, which wasn't a great idea because we had nothing in development for afterwards, so we didn't kind of take a couple of that 15 kind of core people to work on a development slate. It was all hands on deck, just trying to make sure that the whole thing didn't fall apart, because we were working with co-producers, a paper pipeline. We were shipping paper around the world, and it took everything that we had just to hold it all together. And we were doing that, so signing out the payroll at the end of the month, while trying to also look at the visual style and how we could manage that, and for the budget that we had for that film, how could we best create the strongest visual style that we could. And so we looked into our own history, the history of Ireland, the culture, and then that began to kind of focus the dial for us. So as you can see in these pages, we were kind of a little bit all over the place. The ideas of nature and civilization, which has become a theme through all of our work, and the space between those two things was something that we were able to build a really strong visual language around, and the balance, and we tried to get into our animatics, and into every time that we took a script into storyboard, we tried to layer our stories in a way that people of all audiences, all ages, could get something from the stories that we were telling. And that's when I really became aware, because Kells is a beautiful film, and it's one that is very close to my heart. But I became aware of tonal imbalance and how to make a promise to your audience, whether you're working in preschool or anything in horror, even, like how to make up the promise to your audience of this is what you're going to get. And so that's something that we've been trying to hone over the years. But it also made me aware that even in a film where we have like a god of death, like Crom, a sacrificial god, or a god that you sacrifice to, that children were just able to watch it on their own level and take from it things that they wanted to take from it. So with this particular girl, Hannah, had a particular relationship with the character of Aisling, and so she that's what she concentrated on for that. And around that time, I became aware of the work of Tommy Ungerer. So Tommy said that children need to kind of experience fear in some way in order to know how to conquer it, and that's something that it was really important to him, and became important to me too. So around that time, I was my own children, came into the world and became my own little petri dish as well for understanding what young people, where the boundaries of fear are and all of this. So my husband became a stay-at-home dad as I kind of continued on in the company, in the Cartoon Saloon. And one day I came home and he told me that my eldest son Oliver had watched an episode of Peppa Pig. They love Peppa Pig. They really did. It was a staple in our house. But there was one episode that really scared him, with a robot dinosaur, and I couldn't figure out why. Because around that time, they were making these kind of drawings as well. I think this is something that he did a couple of years later. But they were, like, if I tried to pitch this I wouldn't get very far. I said, okay, this is a series for 7-year-olds, and it's got like a sea monster and some guy who's going to be made a sacrifice of. So I wouldn't get very far with it. But so these are things that just continue to interest me, through the years. But while that was going on, we were Kells came out. It did okay-ish kind of thing in box office, but then took on a whole second life when it became Oscar nominated. But we were really broke because we had stretched too far, too quickly, and it really didn't work out that well for us, and so we looked really successful. All of those little soundbite, headlines were there, but it wasn't a huge success. We didn't know how to get out of the hole that we were in because we didn't have the financial side. We were overdeveloped from the creative side and underdeveloped from the financial side, and so we had friends to help us dug us out of holes. Eileen Bell from Enterprise Ireland is one of many people that really helped us create that business plan eventually and at least see what we were about and whether our visions aligned and how we were going to push ourselves forward over the next 5 years. Jamie Bolio is an incredible artist, an animator who was a passionate believer in independent film and just was a massive champion in the US for The Secret of Kells, as were Dave and Eric from G-Kids as well, and they were really amazing. I'm realizing my time is getting very short and I've only have some of the slides so I've gone through. So I'm going to finish it up fairly soon, I think, actually. We'll get on to Q&A. But just, you know about the series and you know about the films, but we were also making commercials at this time. And I used to find it really difficult. We would have to pitch over a weekend to try and get in a commercial, and then that commercial could, sustain us over many months while we got to work on our creative work. But we always learned a lot on these commercials. So this was for Invest Northern Ireland commercial that we did over 10 years ago now, I think, maybe 12 years ago. But that's something that, we eventually were able to let go of the commercials, which was really fantastic for us because it meant that we were able to concentrate a little bit more. And those saying no is really, really important, and it's a skill that you need to develop. I find it really difficult with projects because all projects are really interesting, but trying to find what exactly are the ones that you want to spend your time doing was something that we found difficult, and I think it's something that continues to be a difficulty for us. But now we're at a position where we say no a lot, which is, I guess, good. I'm going to leave it there because I want to leave some time for questions, I think. And so that's that. That's a little bit of the journey of Cartoon Saloon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nora, for taking us through that. It was absolutely fascinating to watch. I'm sure we'll agree. It's just a beautiful thing to see that process develop. Right, we've got a few minutes left for some questions. So I think we're distributing some microphones. We've got some fabulous volunteers who are helping us tonight. So does anybody have a question for Nora? It's difficult to see with the light. Sorry, 1 second. Anybody who'd like to put their hand up and ask some questions for Nora? Over here, there's Greg Childs bloke. He's quite popular. You could probably have a microphone for him. Thank you. Yeah, that'd be good. And in the meantime, please have a think about a question you'd like for Nora. And we'll start with the maestro.
Nora, I was wondering, when you actually all moved to Kilkenny, did you move with those sort of visionary thoughts, the 3 words that you outlined in your, or did they come later?
Oh, they came much, much later. Yeah, we had no clue that we were trying to tell brave stories or tell them beautifully. We just instinctively were a group of people who got together with similar sensibilities, and we ended up kind of nodding at each other and then shaking our heads at each other the right amount of times. And so no, we didn't. That's kind of business plan stuff that you can kind of, and you usually only write your business plan when you fall into trouble, really, kind of thing, or when you're so. No, we didn't know that. We literally just like drawing together, and to this day, that's still what calms us down, rebonds us as a group, and kind of centers us, is that we are still excited by seeing each other's drawings, or the two sentences that sound like the beginning of something, that's where it continues to kind of gel for us, and that's where I think that's where it really started for us.
Another question for Nora. Hands up, please. I'll have to come to you, kind of talk into my ear. Okay.
Nora, thanks very much. Fascinating talk, and I felt there's so much more still to come. But you and Tom and Paul are one of the great creative partnerships of European filmmaking, and I wonder how you've prioritized your projects over the years as to who does what when.
Yeah, this is really interesting because Paul for 20 years or more was producing, not because he isn't a brilliant director and doesn't have a fantastic cinematic sensibility and a brilliant storytelling mind, and we absolutely would bring Paul in for script reads and all of the kind of stages all the way along, but it was because he was the nicest one of us. We would send him out to market. He was the most if we put me into MIP or whatever, I would find a corner and try and disappear into it, whereas Paul would always just go and shake people's hands and make sure that he's just incredibly nice. So that's why Paul became the producer, and then myself and Tom, we just liked being behind the computers and working with the teams, and it's only in recent years really that I came out from behind the computers to the point that I have, I guess, and those roles change and they evolve, and as to what ones come next, it's timing. A lot of the Puffin Rock, for example, which is a preschool show that we continue to make. We made a feature last year we were trying to sell that for years before we partnered up with Dog Ears in Derry, and that's when it got the momentum. And when Laura Campbell, who was working with Dog Ears at the time, had the great idea of just making it into a picture book that people could physically have. Didn't matter whether we got it sold or whatever, but just something that they could see the potential, and indeed it took off immediately. But before that point, people were saying, make it older, make it younger, make it 3D, make it 2D, make it stop motion, age it up, age it down, all of this kind of stuff. And our head was being twisted because we weren't that experienced at that point either, and we didn't have the kind of center in ourselves to kind of say, okay, what do we want it to be? And so when this is it, partnerships with Dog Ears, they helped us find that center and became part of that center themselves. So timing, sometimes it can be luck, as well. And we were talking earlier about we never really truly, when we develop up something, we kind of, a folder mightn't be touched for a couple of years, but we never actually say, that's on the shelf and we're never going to open it again. It's just whatever the timing is right for. Thank you.
I think one last question, if possible, and then one last question, and then let's see. So, gentleman up there, if you'd like to, let's see. Unless I have to dash up there, let's see.
Thanks. It's not a question, just to say thank you, really. I am a big fan of the Breadwinner, and I did a talk a couple of weeks ago at my old A-level college, and I just wanted to make the point that animation is not a genre, it's a medium, and I showed the trailer of the Breadwinner, and it really inspired a lot of kids, particularly 16, 17-year-olds, because they had never seen the film, and it's just to say thank you, really, for making that, and long may you and Cartoon Saloon continue to innovate and inspire.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's a nice way to finish it. Thank you very much. Before you go, Nora, we'd like to present you Marion Edwards, who's our chair of the CMC advisory. Oh, thank you, actually. That's not Marion. You're Marion. There we are. Wow, you changed a lot. We'd just like to please come and stand here, Nora, just so we can give you a proper due to say thank you very much for Marion here, our chair of advisory at the CMC. Giving you a nice present. Thank you very much indeed to our creative keynote speaker, Nora Twomey. Here we go. Thank you, Nora.